All right, I think we can get started. Hello, welcome to the Statistics Alumni Panel. For those of you who do not know me, I am Elizabeth Schifano, Associate Professor and Undergraduate Program Director for the Department of Statistics. Our Statistics Academic Advisor, Alyssa O'Keefe, and I wanted to put something together for our majors that would provide both perspective on some of the many things you can do after graduation with a statistics or related major, as well as the opportunity to get some advice from recent graduates. So we hope this event, hosted by the Department of Statistics, with support from CLAS Alumni Relations and the Center for Career Development, can do this for you. Special thanks go out to Alyssa O'Keefe, Elissa Kelly from Alumni Relations, and Lisa Famularo from the Center of Career Development for helping to organize this event. And of course, huge thanks to our panelists for their time and participation. Now, Lisa is also our moderator, so without further ado, I will turn this over to her. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that awesome intro. And I also want to extend my welcome to everyone who has decided to join us for today. Just a quick introduction of myself. I am a career coach at the Center for Career Development at Uconn. And essentially what that means is in my role, I do a lot of one-on-one career coaching with Uconn students to help them not only set career goals, but also work towards achieving those. So that can involve anything from working on a document like a resume or a cover letter to interviewing skills, networking, job or internship search. And I think the big one is career exploration. And I know that's what we're here to talk about today. What can I do with my statistics major? How do I make that happen? So I am super excited to be able to interact with all of our panelists and ask them questions that will hopefully help all of you as current students answer some of those questions for yourself. So without further ado, I want to allow our lovely panelists to introduce themselves because I know that's who you're here to hear from today. So I will go ahead and advance through some slides with our lovely photos and bios of each of our panelists. And then panelists, when your slide comes up, if you could do a brief intro, share your name, a little bit about yourself, what you're currently doing, and anything else you think would be good for our audience to know, that would be awesome. So Tim, you're first up, and I will turn it over to you.
Hey guys, thank you. Yeah, my name is Tim Crawford. I am my title is analyst. I'd say data analyst for the New England Revolution. I'm hopeful that we're getting to the point where I don't have to explain that that's a soccer team anymore, but it might be. So yeah, it's a professional soccer team. We play at Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play, same owner, all that stuff too. We're in Major League Soccer. And this coming up will be my 10th season with the team. I graduated Uconn in 2007, so I'm officially the oldest one on the panel, which is crazy to think about, but so that's 14 years ago. My goodness. Yeah, I was a high school math teacher for a couple of years. I should say too, at Uconn, I was a math major and a stat minor. I wasn't really sure how I felt about statistics, honestly, leaving Uconn. I was like, I liked the idea of it, but wasn't a huge fan. And then I ended up teaching AP stats at Burbank High School in California. And after that, I was hooked. I decided to go back to school for my master's at UCLA, but ended up getting the job with the Revs in my first year. So I left during that. I cut out of school there and moved back to the East Coast. Yeah, I've been working there ever since. My role's changed a lot from year to year. I'm sure we'll get into that, but it's all analytics on the team side. So not financial ticket sales type stuff. It's mostly things like helping the team analyze opposition, analyze players, scouting, all that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a dream for me. I'm obsessed with sports and math, so it worked out great.
All right. Hey, everyone. So my name is Sarah Crothers. I work as an asset owner, which I'll talk more about as we get to our questions, what that means. But I'm an asset owner in our data science department at the Hartford. I graduated in 2018, which was already 3 years ago, which is pretty crazy. It feels like it was just yesterday. But I graduated with a BA in statistics and a minor in business. When I was in undergrad, I actually started as an actuarial science major, in one semester and decided that was not for me, but I really loved math and stats, and this was a little bit more of a general path for me to take, where I could kind of explore different things without kind of committing to be an actuary for the rest of my life. So I'm really glad I did that because I really love it. And I started my career at the Hartford in a rotational program, which I'll talk probably more about as well. And I think I'm one of the few people that can say I really use what I learned in my degree very, very regularly in my day-to-day, which I really love. I'm also getting my master's in data science right now through Northwestern University, online, obviously, because COVID, but it was online before COVID happened, which I love that too, and happy to talk about that more as well. But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Bryant, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I have like
There you go.
lines on my computer and I forget that I have to hit both of them. But hi everyone, my name is Brian Dominguez. I graduated from the University of Connecticut in 2013. I majored in math and statistics. Similar to some of the other stories, I kind of went in and thought I wanted to be an actuary. I'm from the Hartford area, so I'm really familiar with like, the insurance companies, travelers, and the Hartford, and I thought that that's the route I wanted to go, and decided that's not what I wanted to do after 2 semesters pursuing that major. So I pivoted. I figured math is kind of my strength, so why not just continue on with that? And I really enjoyed it. So I started with Travelers. I've been with Travelers my whole life, even from internships. And I can talk about some of those and how I got involved with Travelers. I joined the EDGE program, which is a partnership that Travelers has with several schools, not just in the Northeast, but Uconn and Central are 2 of the main schools that they partner with here in Connecticut. Try to stay very busy even before COVID, be part of nonprofits. I talk a little bit about how Uconn kind of set me up for that success after I graduated from outside of the classroom. There's many opportunities, such as going to the Career Service Center, but also getting involved on campus, being part of organizations and stuff like that. And then, something that's very true to me that I'll end off with is just giving back to the community. I mean, this last year has been crazy for everyone, and it kind of puts many things into perspective of what's important in all our lives. And I to get away from work and do the day-to-day, I just like giving back to the community, and I've done that a little bit more over the last year. So be more than happy to talk about that too. But that's it for me.
Hi everyone, my name is Ava. I graduated in 2015 and I've spent the almost 6 years since at the Nielsen Company under a few different roles. Started out as analyst and now I'm a manager in the marketing effectiveness data analytics team. So you might know Nielsen from the TV ratings. They're the ones who tell you like how many people watch. But I'm working more on the kind of consulting side. So I have clients in primarily the CPG industry, and I help them optimize their marketing and promotion plans to increase sales. And that's done through like multiple linear regression models, along with some other different offerings that we offer our clients. So I thought it was funny that Tim mentioned AP statistics because that is how I actually chose a statistics major. I chose statistics because I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I liked too many things and I always liked math. So I thought that statistics was a good way to get a degree that could be applied to a lot of different fields. As you can tell by these panelists, you can be applied to a lot of different things. So yeah, that's why I kind of chose this route. Is I like marketing, and that's kind of what ended me at the Nielsen Company.
Awesome. Thank you so much for kicking us off with those introductions, everyone. I think that was a great start to, Ava, to your point, to show the diversity of career paths we have represented on the panel today. And I hope that our students are going to really take advantage of that. So at this point, we're going to dive into our first question. But before I throw it out there, I do want to just kind of open the door for any of the students who are here in attendance today. There is a Q&A panel within your WebEx program. So please, if you have any questions throughout the event, feel free to throw them in there. You're also welcome to use the chat. I will be monitoring both and hopefully bringing forth some of your questions to the panelists. But I do have some of my own that I'd like to get started with. So the first question that I want to throw out there is, you all touched on this a little bit already, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you got from graduation to where you are today. And in particular, I know a lot of you mentioned that you sort of like maybe went in one direction and sort of switched paths a little bit, or like, you know, got a new role or went in a different direction. And so I would also love if you could, you know, touch on a little bit of like how you made the decisions to make those changes or to go in those different directions, and kind of like what you learned along the way. So I know that I want to switch up the order a little bit, and this time, Sarah, why don't you go first? Because I know you talked about considering different career options earlier already.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, I started out as an actuarial science major. I feel like a lot of people in the Hartford area kind of have heard about the actuarial career path because it's the insurance capital of the world. So I thought that's what I wanted to do, and pretty quickly realized it was not. But I decided I still, you know, with all of the great connections Uconn has with various insurance companies in the area, I found it was very straightforward, kind of connect with different people and insurance companies in the area. So I definitely leveraged, like, I forget what the platform name is, but I went on, I think it was Husky Career something at the time, to see kind of what the options were and everything. And I started off at a different insurance company for my first internship, basically took whatever internship, I applied to probably like 30 different ones and got one. So that's the one I took. And it helped me kind of solidify my kind of understanding of what I really wanted to do in my career, at least to some extent. And that's where I heard about data science for the very first time. And it sounded like exactly what I wanted to do. It was like kind of a mix between statistics and business and technology and all these different things that really interested me, and kind of using some more cutting edge technology to do all these things. So that was where that first kind of became of interest to me. And then I went over to the Hartford, which is where I am now, for an internship, and then ultimately got an offer for a full-time position. I started out in a 2-year early career leadership development program, where we rotated for 6 months to a year between different roles within the company, which I feel like if you are unsure of where you want to go in your career and you can find some sort of a rotational program, that can be one of the most valuable things, for a multitude of reasons. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I kind of had an idea, but having all these different experiences really solidified that for me. And it just gave me a really big breadth of experience very quickly. Like, I'm on my 5th job in 3 years of being kind of in the workforce, which is pretty rare. And so now I've since placed into a permanent position in data science, which is, like I said, it was something that, you know, from my first internship I'd heard about and had always been really interested in. And I ultimately decided that that's the path I wanted to take. But for a while I thought I wanted to be a data scientist. I was a stats major. I really enjoy kind of getting my hands dirty in the data and everything. So that's really the path I thought I wanted to take. But because I got to do this rotational program, I started to realize that I also really enjoyed the strategic component of things and communicating with our business partners and really like managing teams and people and projects. So the role I have now was really that kind of perfect marriage of being able to work on data science models while also working on that high level strategic work. So I've been in this role for a little over 6 months now, and I'll be here I'm not rotating anymore, so I'll be here for a while, and I really like it.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah, for talking us through all of that, and in particular for speaking about rotational programs, because I know those are a great way to kind of explore a bunch of different areas. But I'd like to open the floor to hear from anyone else who'd like to jump in as well. We can go in whatever order we'd like at this point.
I'll jump in. So earlier when I was saying my introduction, I really didn't say my title, what I do really at Traveler, so I apologize for that. I work as a regional real estate manager. I work for real estate. I don't sell real estate or anything like that, or real estate insurance for Travelers. I more manage the properties. Travelers is headquartered in Hartford, so there's several buildings that the company owns in Hartford and in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I kind of oversee the portfolio here in Connecticut. And but going back to like my career journey, how I got to where I'm at today compared to when I graduated is I mentioned I was part of Traveler's Edge, which is a scholarship program that Travelers offered. And I found out about it my freshman year at UConn. I was just exploring. I was really more trying to find a scholarship because I was trying to think like, how the hell I'm going to pay for school. But I stumbled across the program and it was like, you know, a full scholarship. But I think the biggest thing for me was the internship opportunities and the one-on-one mentorships. Those two things are probably the most critical. I know finances is important too, but those things end up paying out so much more than I can ever imagine. The internships, you know, they kind of gave me opportunities to figure out what exactly I want to do. Travelers is a huge company, 30,000 plus employees and so many different field offices, so many different departments that there's not just one role that can fit a statistical major or a mathematical major candidate. So I started out in product management, and I'll quickly go through some of these roles. Product management is pretty much trying to figure out how much insurance is going to change in terms of price for a customer. And I was part of like the analytical team that kind of went through the data, dive into them, determine, okay, this person that ages between 25 and 30 are more riskier, so we're going to increase it by X% more than another kind of group. And we did a bunch of stuff. There's so many different factors I could spend hours talking about or even days. But then I decided that I wanted to pivot, and I got into operations, and I joined a leadership development program, which many companies have them. And I definitely encourage you to start, you know, if you're interested in a field, look at some of the companies and see if they offer these programs, because they're really great. You know, they're structured, they give you rotations into different departments. You know, and in the program, I was in billing and payment services. I got a taste of real estate. And then I also manage a group of account managers. And that was pretty good for me personally, because I always wanted to manage people. At least I thought I did. And then when I went through that experience, I decided, managing people is not for me. So I kind of need to pivot again. And that's when I decided, when I graduated the program, I liked real estate. I liked, you know, having that face-to-face interaction. And then just to quickly end on my experience today, how it relates to what I learned in school is a lot of what many companies are doing, and you will experience this, is because of COVID, people are looking at utilization data and determining how much real estate portfolio does a company really need, because many people are working from home. And you guys have probably seen in the news in the last year, there's been major companies, IT companies that are saying, you know, you can work from home forever. We don't need people coming back into the office. Travelers hasn't said that. We're very conservative, but we're looking at, okay, how many people do we really need in the office? And then what does that impact to our bottom line, and how much space do we really need? So I've been looking at utilization data before the pandemic to determine how much can we downsize and how much can we eventually save the company, because, you know, it's financials are very important. So I'll end there.
Oh, dude, at the same time. Good job. No, you go. That's cool.
Okay. Yeah, when I think of what led me from like my junior, senior year into Nielsen was, well, it first started when I studied abroad. I was studying at the University of Melbourne in Australia, and I took a marketing class, and that really sparked my interest. And so I started researching statistics and marketing and what that type of role would include. And then it was actually kind of a little serendipitous, because also I found my job or my company on the Husky career site, and they do on-campus recruiting, which I am now a part of on the other side. Like now I'm the recruiter, which is kind of cool. So I did an on-campus interview, and then the in-office interview as well. And I started with a pretty good group of analysts. Nielsen hires a lot of analysts across the country, but quite a few for the Wilton, New York City area. So that is where I started. I'm actually still on that team. It's a team of about 200 people, but over time, my role has changed. And I started out more doing the nitty-gritty modeling, cleaning of the data, setting up of the models. Then I moved more into kind of client insight roles. And then now I am called a data lead. So I'm leading initiatives of how we can improve upon our data collection, data validation efforts, and basically have better results for our clients, and lead relationships with data providers like Google, Facebook, all the social sites. And yeah, that's kind of what my journey has been. And I've been there for 6 years now. So sometimes I think, wow, it's been so long. What has made me stay for so long? And I think the biggest thing is I'm always learning something new. Like at the end of the day, I can always say that I learned something new that I did not know the day before, which is huge. Also, I'm always changing clients. I've worked on so many random clients, from like Pampers diapers to CoverGirl cosmetics. So things are always changing in terms of what industries I'm tapping into. And yeah, and now I'm managing people, which I'm actually enjoying. I didn't know if it was going to be for me, but I actually do really enjoy managing some of the newer analysts as well. So yeah, that's been kind of my journey. I think that's it.
All right. So I can be the shining example of someone who had no idea of what they wanted to do. I think this goes a little bit into, I think you said this earlier too, Ava, but yeah, so I like math. So I went to Uconn and was like, I'm going to study math. And let me tell you, the reason I went to Uconn was because I love sports. And that was really, really reason number one. It's ridiculous, but I was like, I'm going to be somewhere for 4 years. I'm going to go to every sporting event possible. So Uconn offered that. And that's why I went there largely. But I knew I love math, and I'm obsessed with math. So I dove into that. And it's funny because math majors, it was the opposite of what these guys are talking about, where everyone started off as math majors and then slowly moved into being actuaries. And I gave them a lot of garbage for that. It was not okay with me because I'm a very pure math person. I love the theory. I love logic, to be honest. That's my number one. And so I was very particular. I was like, I love math, but I really don't like numbers that much. I love math, but I really don't like dollar signs. If you put dollar signs on it, I'm out. So like, I was really like narrowing myself down into things that were acceptable. Science, no, not at all. And so I got through my 4 years, and it's funny because people are, what are you going to do with a math degree? I was like, everyone needs math. It's going to be easy. It's fine. Are you going to teach? And I said, no, absolutely not. And then I ended up teaching. I spent one year like writing math problems for these textbooks, like the CDs that go with textbooks, and that was kind of cool. But it was just like an out of college thing, and it was good stuff. But then I ended up moving to California to teach high school math for a couple of years, and I really like teaching. I like being able to, first of all, I get really excited about math, so I can convey that really well, and I have decent ways of explaining it. But I taught for 2 years. Like I said, when I taught statistics, that was really the moment I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And as I said, I was very sports obsessed. So I was like, man, if I could do statistics with with sports, that would be awesome. I had no expectation that was a realistic thing that I could get into, because I figured there's tons of people out there, especially going to a sports school. I was like, everybody wants to do that. But I was like, well, we'll see what happens. If nothing else, I really find people interesting. So something like market research, I think, is awesome. And I was like, man, if that's what I end up doing, that'll be awesome. So I went to do statistics mostly because I didn't have any real computer knowledge of how to do statistics. Like, we did a little bit of SAS stuff at Uconn when I was there, but I kept seeing people advertising for R, and I was like, I don't know what that is, and I really don't know SAS. So if they're asking for that, I'm doomed. So I went there for that. And like I said, I was only at UCLA for like 1 semester, and then got this job. So I bailed because I was like, this is why I'm going here. So if I can already do it, then I'm out. But it was enough to give me a lot of R, and R is what I've been using every day, all the time. It's my go-to. So, and yeah, I ended up at the Revs, and I've been here for my 9-year anniversary is actually like tomorrow, I think. And so it's been a long ride, but I've always thought I'd be the kind of person to stay somewhere for a really long time. And every year is different, because every year is a different season, and we've had some highs, we've had lows. I've had 3 different head coaches now. So I've survived that, but also a lot of adapting and frustrating to you. But again, we'll probably get into these things later. But yeah, that's kind of my journey.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing that detailed description of your journey. I definitely heard some themes there of just like not necessarily ending up where you expected, and trying new things along the way, and looking for ways to sort of combine what you were learning in the classroom with some of your interests outside the classroom, or avoiding the things that you didn't like outside of the classroom and having those not be part of your job. So I think those are all just kind of like quintessential steps of the job search process, and I'm glad to hear that they were all part of your processes as well. And I think that's actually a good segue into like the present day. You're all in different industries, you're all in different roles, and I know that there are some students on this call who still don't know what they want to do, and they're looking for advice on how to decide, but also perhaps more in-depth information about the careers that you all are in. So if you could take a few minutes to explain like a typical day in your current role, what are like some of the specific things that you do or that you work on, and then any background, education, or training that is sort of like required for your field, just in case there's someone in the audience who wants to go into that field and maybe doesn't know quite what it takes or something along those lines. So Ava, can I call on you to go first in this one, and then anyone else can just jump in after?
Sure, yeah. Okay, so current day, it's a lot of emailing, to be honest, a lot of calls like this, especially kind of more in my current role. So I'm based in project work. So I have clients that I meet with on a weekly basis, email with, and then I also have more internal focused process improvements and efficiency improvements. So my time is probably split like 75-25. From the client project perspective, it's kind of cyclical. So I'll spend a couple months on a project and then move on to the next one. There's going to be some overlap, but my average day includes looking at a lot of Excel files, a lot of data, making sure that what I requested. So we do a lot of external data sources. So I'll, for example, a media agency, if my client is running a project, I'll reach out to the media agency to get the data of what they executed in terms of on their social sites. Like, what did they execute on Twitter? What did they execute on like Pandora? I mean, the list goes on and on. So I spend a lot of time communicating with them, making sure they understand the request. And then once they give me the data, QCing it, making sure it is complete and accurate and exactly what we asked for. And then helping the people, the analysts that work with me, helping them understand how we're going to go about processing it and getting it into our format that we need to input it into our models. And then I also spend time in terms of process improvements. For example, I'm working right now on an initiative of how we can best model influencer activity. The influencer space on YouTube and social sites is just expanding so much, especially in certain industries like the beauty industry. So I spend time working across teams within Nielsen, figuring out how we can best answer our clients' business questions when it comes to something like that. And yeah, that's a lot of it. A lot of it is Excel, a lot of it is email. So in terms of what was the second question, like what kind of skills would be needed?
Yeah, like what sort of good education or training or background would be helpful to be successful in your industry?
Yeah, so I think Excel is a huge thing. That was something that I took an Excel course from the business school, I believe. It was pretty basic, but I recommend taking an Excel course if that's offered, or it's all over the internet, right? You could probably watch a million YouTube videos. I think having some sort of intermediate knowledge of Excel is really important in our industry to make your life so much easier when you know the shortcuts and how to do things. And also being able to talk to clients and really dig down to how you can best answer their questions and help them out. And also being very detail oriented, being able to spot errors because errors do happen. And being able to catch those errors ahead of time is a huge skill, which just comes down to being organized and being detail oriented. So I'd say those are some of the big things that come to mind.
All right, I'm going to take second this time. I'd say my average day really depends on the day of the week because we go in pretty much weekly cycles when things get going, right? Once the season's happening. Also, off season looks very different from in season to me too. But like in a typical season, you know, I end up working on the weekend a lot too because of we have Saturday matches, and so if we have a Saturday match, immediately after the game, I'm doing stuff to analyze that game. I'm doing stuff to analyze whoever our next opponent just played. Like I'm breaking that game down, and so we have a lot of stuff to do right around matches on the weekends. And then during the week, it's maybe filling in some gaps, but also probably just working on bigger projects of new things that I'm trying to add, or helping out with sports science, our sports science department, which is our guys at training every day wear these trackers on their backs that track their acceleration, their speed, their distance, all that stuff in different metrics to monitor how they're performing. And so those guys know that subject matter a lot better than me, but I'm helping them build out their models, build out stuff in Tableau, so they can have daily reports. And so that's been a lot of what I've been doing for the past year, has really been transforming what those guys are looking at. And then scouting stuff too, as something comes up, as we have a player that we're looking at, hopefully they ask me about him and see what I can see about him to help make a better decision. I'm hoping to push that down the line into me helping guide the search rather than just be something where they found a guy and they asked me about him. It's me being like, here's some interesting guys. What do you think of them? But we've had our focus on data more on tactical and opposition stuff in the time that I've been there, whereas other teams are really focused on scouting. So we've been kind of backwards, and I think other teams have started to get more tactical stuff now. So I don't know, it's all over the place. But suffice to say, I think skills wise, the biggest thing for me, like I said, was getting R was huge. If I didn't have R, I don't know what I'd do with all this data. I couldn't do it. Excel is not, like, I do Excel sometimes for some things, but for the most part, like our data needs to be worked with in programming sense, because it's just these weird files. Like the main file, I get a file for every match that's just event, and it's these XML files, and that's from Opta, and so I have to turn that into tables and things like that and manipulate it into the way I want it to start analyzing it. So that's what I use R for. And I'll say that our files are only getting bigger, and now we have something called Second Spectrum in our league that is tracking all 22 players 25 times per second, where they are on the field, and just positionally, as well as the ball. And so this creates an enormous JSON file, which I'm now having to pick up Python because I don't think R is good enough to work with it. So what I'll say is having some computer programming knowledge would be awesome in my area. Obviously, like statistics wise, the theory of it is essentially understanding what these models do. Calculating them is up to the computer, and that's again where the programming comes into play. So it's good to have as much programming knowledge as you can for these things. But yeah, being able to work with big data and be able to hunt it down and clean it up is awesome. And I think I'm a little bit behind in it and trying to catch up because it's just moving so fast, right? Like what I knew when I came in was good, but we're getting huge files at a crazy rate, so it's hard to keep up. But man, if I could hire someone who could just get the files for me and get them sorted into something I could work with, it'd be awesome. That's the biggest thing right now.
I'll jump right in. For me, a lot of my day is sitting here and taking calls, whether it be with the project teams that are out, renovating floors in our buildings. I also have conversations with our finance team to make sure that we're on budget, and we're tracking towards our year-end goal of staying within budget. Sometimes we have calls with HR and recruiting teams, and if we're hiring and looking for individuals, they do all the, I say, quote unquote, the dirty work, and they bring in the good candidates for us to interview and bring them in eventually. But yeah, every day is different. There's different calls, there's different meetings. Every quarter is going to be different. There's different challenges that present themselves. In terms of skills, I think, every skill that was brought up is spot on. But I'll be honest, one of the skills for me that helped me out the most is networking, and it's just getting out there. I know it's challenging now because there's probably not that many events going on campus. But once things get back to normal, it's really important to get out there, go to those career fairs, those events that companies are sponsoring, get your name and face out there, and use this time to kind of get those skills that Tim was mentioning, the R's, the SAS, Pythons, whatever the case may be, whatever interests you or whatever, the career path you're trying to get into, or you just trying to, build your toolbox of skill sets. Use this time to kind of learn those things and get that knowledge base, because it's all going to help you. It's not none of that is going to hurt you. But I think one of the important things, especially, and I think one of the questions coming up, and I'll just hit on it now, is when people intern at Travelers and some of the students come in, I always tell them, take some time, at least half an hour to an hour a day, to go meet somebody new. Even if you don't know them, just schedule time. Everyone's very friendly. Everyone's, all about networking, getting to know each other and help each other out. It's just very important. It sets you up for that success after you graduate. I was very fortunate, and I'll throw myself out there, and I'm very proud of this, is that before I started my senior year, I already had my full-time offer. And that was such a stress relief. Like, it was like the best experience ever. It's not saying that I hung out and chilled the last year throughout the whole year, but it's just something that I really wanted to accomplish and work through in that last summer internship. So use these years in your college experience to kind of get involved with organizations. Talked about like the Excel and the Outlooks and stuff like that. Those are the day-to-day tools, and those are easy to pick up. But some of the things that also helped me out that I got through the experience at UConn was just as simple as running meetings. And that's just getting involved with organizations, is, you know, putting an agenda together, you know, kind of running through that agenda, asking people questions, getting them engaged. Like, that's a challenge now, especially because we're all behind these computers and webcams. It's hard to get people engaged and the involvement level higher. And those are the things that people are going to be looking for that they probably weren't looking for 5-10 years ago. And those are key, and those are going to be very important moving forward, because we're moving to this new digital world that we're all living through now.
Yeah, now I can go. So as I mentioned before, my role's as an asset owner, and which is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's a universal term around the industry or anything, but I would say it's most akin to a project manager maybe, or a product owner specifically to data science. So the way that our teams are structured is every project basically will have a data scientist who does the modeling, a data engineer who works with the technical, and this new role, an asset owner, which is really the person that makes sure the project is running in the right direction, but most importantly, that when we're building models, we're building them towards a business solution. Because I think a really important part of, if you're going to be in analytics or data science or anything at an organization, that it should all be done for a purpose and in the direction of a strategic solution. So that's really what my role is. In terms of day-to-day, it's a lot of meetings in terms of meeting with our business stakeholders and ensuring that the models that we're building are actually in alignment with what they need. Building trust with them is a huge thing too. If they don't trust what our models are producing, they're not going to use our model results, and then all of our time was wasted. So really building that trust with them is a huge part of that as well. And just staying kind of in tune with how can we use our models for different use cases throughout the business. Are there different ways that we can leverage some of our data? What are the third-party data sources that we have available right now, and can we leverage those for some of our models? So it's a lot of strategic work for me. At this point, in terms of skills, I would say almost anything you can learn on the job, really, to be honest. But if you were to get ahead of the curve now, Excel is always an important one to know. Like a couple of people have already said, R is one that I personally really love as well, like Tim mentioned. I'd say at my company, we're leaning more in the direction of Python now than R. So that's another one I would say, if you really want to kind of stay ahead of kind of the different demands of the industry, that Python's a great one to know a little bit about. And then SQL is a really great one to be able to pull your own data. So those are a few of kind of the hard skills that I would say are important if you want to do like some really serious analytics work. And then I think soft skills are probably some of the more important ones, like you know, like Bryant mentioned, being able to kind of network and communicate. And I would say the most important thing you can do is just be someone that people like to work with. That will get you very far in terms of just, you know, making connections with folks, building trust, and kind of yeah, that's basically it.
Great. I super agree with that last note there, Sarah. I think soft skills are really important and are sometimes equally as important as all the technical skills. And I think that was a theme throughout all of your responses. And something else I just want to point out that I noticed is all of you spoke a little bit about not just your daily responsibilities, but the work environment that you're in as well. And so like Sarah and Ava, you mentioned working on like project-based teams, and Tim, you said you're in more of like a cyclical environment, and Bryant, you said every day is different. So I think that's an important thing to consider as well when you're exploring different careers, and getting a feel for what the day-to-day or the cycle looks like can be telling. And there is a follow-up question that I want to throw out there that came in via the Q&A panel. which is to those of you who have an additional degree, specifically in business, either a major or a minor, how useful was this in your post-grad career path or in your current role? And I would also add to that question personally, do you think that it was like required, or do you think that you would have been able to be just as successful without that additional minor?
Yeah, I got the minor in when I it was called business fundamentals. So I don't know if things have changed, but I know the business school is so, or at least it was very strict about the classes that we could take. So I would say the most interesting class I took was when I was abroad. It was an intro to marketing class. But in those classes, I think the biggest takeaway that I learned is just thinking outside of just math. So I was taking all these math and stat classes, and I think some of the more gen ed classes are super helpful, not only just to get exposure to different fields that you could apply statistics to, but in the case of the business school, I think it was great to think of real world examples. So I remember we worked through case studies. And so from my perspective, because I was interested in marketing, thinking through that side. So for me, it was more thinking through what now my clients go through, because my clients are the manufacturers of products and also the media agencies that work with them. So now having that experience, I kind of have a general idea of what their perspective is, which can therefore make me a better consultant to help them. I don't know if things have changed in the business school, but I think there are kind of limitations, like I said, to the amount of classes. But I would say taking classes outside of the statistics department is always super helpful, just to gain just a wider perspective and start thinking about what you might be interested in applying statistics to.
Yeah, I got a business fundamentals minor as well, and I'm glad I did, in terms of just being able to kind of get a different perspective on things. Like, I think it helped me a lot with presentation skills and working in groups, all of these more soft skills that I think we don't always get in some of our more computational heavy classes. They are more general courses, so in terms of like hard skills, I would say I leaned more on my statistics courses for that, but I did find that to be a very useful minor to get. And if I were to do things differently, I may have also considered a computer science minor, because at the time I didn't realize how technical statistics work is nowadays. And it's just going to get more technical, because the way that we're processing such large amounts of data is just becoming increasingly complex. So just something else to consider, and what I might have done if I could redo it.
I think those are both great answers. My takeaway there is that there were definitely some helpful skills that came from those minors that are helping you in your roles today. So I would encourage our students who are in attendance to think about the career that they're interested in and what skills they might be lacking or might need to develop to be successful in that career, and then maybe find a minor, whether it's business or something else, that would supplement their major to help them get there. Would you agree that that's kind of the takeaway? Okay, awesome. So another question that has come in via the chat that I want to throw out there is, how did you find your job? What are some of the resources you used, or whether like physical resources or like people or both? And are there any that you'd recommend for the students on the call to start taking advantage of? And I think, Brian, I'm going to ask you to go first on this one, and then feel free to jump in from there.
Yeah, so I was first introduced to my company when I was a senior in high school. I was taking AP Calculus, and part of the class, we did a field kind of trip to Travelers Insurance. Is not, the most glorious trip, but it was the introduction for me. And look at me now. Since that day, I've probably been here for like 12 years. So little did I know what I was getting myself into, but it kind of opened my eyes. I always thought insurance, people always say it's boring and it's, not fun work. And, it's not like being part of a sports team like Tim is. And I love sports too, but I also knew that through my experience, through my college experience, I was going to figure it out. And this is the time that you have that you can jump around, explore, see different internship opportunities. And I probably didn't go through the whole full experience of finding different companies and looking for them, because I was part of a program and I was kind of married to the company from the get since my first year at Uconn. But that's not to discredit all the different resources that Uconn has to offer. I mean, through the School of Business, or even the Career Center. I think that's the name of it still today. There's many different events that is being thrown and offered and sponsored by many different companies that are not in the insurance industry. There's many different industries that partner with the University of Connecticut. And it's simple stuff, like it could be a mock interview that they sponsor, and you never know who's going to be providing that mock interview. I've done several mock interviews, and I ended up actually interviewing a student for a role, and it's kind of like cool to go through that. But I think, you know, the student was very comfortable in knowing that they knew some of the questions that were coming. And I think those are some of the good things that many students at UConn overlook at the school, is that resume building workshop, the mock interviews, getting a mentor from some of these companies. It doesn't matter if the mentor is not in the field that you want, that, you know, to discredit someone based on their experience in their past and who they might know. You never know, they may be able to link you to someone in a field that you're interested in. But I think the school definitely has many resources and useful tools for you to, I think you mentioned the tool is called Handshake now. I've heard some students talk about it too as they interview with travelers, and from what I hear, it's a good tool. It easily links you to many companies. So that's definitely something that I would leverage if I was on campus today. But I would try my best to get out there, you know, get my name out there, get my face out there, build my resume up, whether it's getting involved on campus or, you know, start signing up for some internships, and not to mention getting those internships happen early in the school year. I know many people wait till the spring semester. Companies start recruiting and they want to complete their recruitment plans in the fall. So that's another advice, is don't wait till last minute to start looking for these opportunities, because they run out quick and companies do not want to wait till the spring to keep recruiting interns.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I found my role on Husky Career Link, which now Handshake. And honestly, I saw it and was like, I don't know, the Hartford, I've heard of it. I guess I'll apply. And I ended up working there full time. So like, I would just say, shoot your shot with any role that interests you genuinely. If you don't meet all the qualifications in the posting, do not worry about it. A lot of roles will say, you know, requires 3 to 5 years of experience, but you need experience to get experience. So start somewhere, apply to different things, and see if you see if you can make some connections. At the very least, it's good interview practice, but just keep applying and trying out different things. And I really like the advice too about starting to apply early in the year to internships. I was usually I tried to have an internship secured before Christmas for sophomore and junior year, and it really just made everything a lot easier. So
Yeah, I'll echo that in terms of, I found my position on the Husky Handshake. I mixed it up. I don't know these names. The Handshake site. And actually, I think I originally found Nielsen because they were listed as at the career fair. So I don't know what this looks like now in the world of COVID, but definitely recommend for the career fair reviewing companies ahead of time so you can research a few. Spend like 10 minutes researching each one that you're interested in so you can ask some questions that kind of show that you do actually have interest in the company. And also, of course, like Sarah said, make sure it's still genuine though. And then I think a good thing about going through the offerings through the career fair and the career center is a lot of the companies that are represented there have those rotational programs, or they at least have some sort of funnel to get those new grads, and they have positions and teams that are set up. Like I think I mentioned earlier, when I started on a team with 6 other people who were just like me. So we all showed up on the first day. We were all new and we became fast friends. And it was a great way to learn because you had people to bounce ideas off of and you can ask stupid questions. So those types of companies that are at the career fair and have relationships with Uconn, oftentimes, in my experience with my friends as well, they have those types of programs that can be really helpful for new grads.
I did a terrible job of looking for a job when I was at UConn. So it was I found my it's weird too. Like my wife and I, and as in everything, are very different. And she's gotten every job she's ever gotten from connections, so I know that works. I've gotten all my jobs from applying, and I've had a really good success rate on applying and interviewing and all that process. So I don't really understand because it's very different. But yeah, I got on it was Teamwork is the site. Like it does a lot of sports leagues, professional leagues and teams and all that stuff. They post a lot of their jobs there. But I'll say that I was the first data analyst in MLS, I believe. I don't think any other team had one at the time. Now I definitely think we're over double digits. Like it's a growing field for sure. And obviously other sports like baseball are pretty darn thick with analysts. Like there's a billion of them. So I don't know that just waiting for an application things is as effective now. What I see a lot more of is guys on Twitter and guys on whatever platforms they can find, social media stuff, like creating their own profile, just creating their own portfolio, starting to do the kind of thing they want to do professionally, but doing it on their own as much as they can. The tricky part with soccer is finding data. It's just not publicly out there, but you can maybe hunt down some people to get it from. But if you can start doing projects in something that you're passionate in and sharing it publicly with things like Twitter and stuff and putting your name out there and creating a portfolio like an artist, so that when you go into these interviews, when you start looking for jobs that you want to do, and you can hand over these things that you've already done that are really interesting to you and are cool examples of the kind of thing you're capable of doing, especially because the people are hiring, if this isn't a position that was there before, they may have no idea what they're really looking for. And so you can say, look, these are the kind of cool things I've investigated before. That'd be awesome. When I got my job, one of the things in the interview process was that they had us do a project. They told us find whatever you can about the MLS draft. Give us any insight you can. Didn't give us any data, and that's all the direction we got. And we had to go hunt things down on our own. So it's kind of like a mini version of what I see people doing now. But a number of guys, I'd say in MLS, that are doing these positions are guys that I've seen on Twitter for years that have just kept putting themselves out there and kind of reaching out, making connections with guys who are already doing it. And we're a little bit of a fraternity too, that when we see an opening come up, we're going to share it and we're going to be like, this guy seems awesome for it, and like kind of push these guys. So if you can make those contacts whatever way, I do think that helps a lot.
Yeah, that's a great, I think, point to end it on there, Tim. And I would, I think it's funny that you mentioned how, you and your wife have these very different experiences, because I think that's how kind of it is with everybody, because there's not like one magical job search solution that works. And so I think that if you like pull a little bit of everything and put it all together, that's kind of like the best that you can do. And so I appreciate how all of you shared like very different resources and different experiences. And of course, plug the Career Center as well, because that's where I work. So I appreciate that. But speaking of resources at UConn, we did have another question come through in the chat about extracurriculars. And so I wanted to throw that out there and ask, were any of you involved in anything, we already talked about minors, but anything else on campus or off campus, I guess, that contributed to your career in some way? And if so, how?
Yeah, I can start. One of my biggest passions at UConn was my extracurricular, which was honors across state borders, which was a group through the honors program, but anyone can join, where every year we would go on alternative spring break trips and work with Habitat for Humanity and travel as a group, and kind of throughout the year kind of educate ourselves on different areas around like privilege and poverty and stuff like that, and then go on these trips and kind of put those learnings to practice. So I really loved that, just from kind of getting involved in the community perspective, but also I did that through all 4 years and ended up being a team leader on the group, and then eventually the director. So it gave me some leadership experience too. So I think that's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door in terms of leadership, is whether it's a volunteer group or any other organization. If you're able to take on a role, even if it's just taking notes for the group, I think it's a great way to boost your resume a little bit.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I also was part of several organizations throughout my 4 years at UConn. One being the Multicultural Business Society. Hopefully they're still at UConn in the School of Business. But being part of that allowed me to not only get the day-to-day run meetings and plan events and stuff like that, but it kind of gives you a forefront of interacting with some of these companies and, work with like-minded individuals that are, trying to promote diversity in the business world, in the corporate world, and trying to get at some of these, unconscious bias that we have in the workplace. That's probably been one of the top things that's been talked about in the country in the last year plus. So that definitely has benefited me, just having some of those trainings and workshops that I went through in that society, to understand that going into the workplace. Some of the things that I was involved with is an organization called ALPA, and that's an acronym for Association of Latino Professionals for America. I am a Latino. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and it was important for me just to, kind of network and get, part of a network of Latinos that are pursuing the same kind of, goals at Uconn. We're not, many people there. We have a small percentage of Latinos at Uconn. So it was just important for me just to familiarize myself with like-minded individuals. And then some, extracurricular that's not really business related. I was part of a fraternity on campus, and not to undermine, the Greek life experience. I really enjoyed it. There's many different benefits to joining a fraternity long-term, but also short-term. We work on many different events and community service events as well, which is, as I mentioned when I started out, was really key for me. And there's many other things to get involved at Uconn. What we're mentioning here are just a sample of what there is out there. I think Uconn has, at the point, over 400 different organizations, probably more today. So, explore, go to the involved fairs, see what's out there, see what fits your interests, or if it's not really interest, or you just want to get experience or exposure to a new area, go for it. It's just gonna make you a better, well-rounded individual. Diversity and inclusion is a key thing that is being, talked about in many different workplaces, and I know we've increased our conversations on that at Travelers, and it does make you, a more individual that performs better in the workplace, just because you don't have that, unconscious bias when you're meeting with others.
Yeah, and I'll speak to some of the activities I did. So I was in an a cappella group, the Uconn Cordials, and I took some opportunities there. Well, first off, it got me comfortable being in front of a crowd, which I think is definitely a good skill, whether public speaking or whatever, but also I helped manage the social media and the finances, so I could speak to that on my resume. And also I was an RA at North Campus for 2 years. So a lot of that was definitely some of that soft skills, that interpersonal relationship building, helping others work through conflicts, communication. And like Brian was saying, I learned a lot about diversity and racism and all of those topics that definitely helps me in my career, especially now as a people manager. So definitely want to say, like, I saw also a comment or a question in the box about if you don't have an internship over the summer, definitely take the opportunity in your resume to speak to experiences that, even if you would feel like it doesn't belong on a resume, you can definitely speak to it in terms of the skills that you've developed. I said, like, even something like babysitting, if that's what you did over the summer, speak to that on how you, like, managing conflict, for example. Anything like that. As a person who does interviews, I love seeing those things on resumes, because there's the more diversity of experience that you have, that makes you a more appealing applicant, in at least my opinion.
Goodness, now I have to remember what the question. Crap, what was the question? Can you remind me again? Sorry, I had an answer and now it's blanking. So
Yes, I know you have an answer. It's the one about extracurriculars and how they help your career.
It's funny. I mentioned this in the chat too, but I was an honor student, and I'd say most of the time while at UConn, I probably thought being an honor student sucked, but it actually, I do think it worked out pretty well. I think in the end, like, having to do my thesis, and a thesis for a math person is awful. I cannot express to you how much I hate writing, and having to write whatever number of pages is a disaster. But actually it helped me think in terms of projects and think about how, you get from a question to an answer in the end. And it's not just answering problems all the time, like, that's not, I would love to do math homework for a living and I can't. And so it's instead like these ideas of, we have a question, let's go find the answer. What's the process? How do we get from A to B? And how do we explain it to people in ways that they'll understand? And I think that was really useful for me. So having some of these like bigger conceptual things was awesome. On top of that too, I mentioned I did Campus Crusade stuff, and while that doesn't seem like it would link up well, I will say I did work with the tech team on there too, and just kind of, I've always had an appreciation for making things look pretty, and I don't think I've sold the visualization side of analytics well to this point. But like I said, I've done a lot of stuff in Tableau this past year, and I am obsessed with that as well. And almost like if I was going to start going in a little bit of a different direction, it would probably be heavily into Tableau. I love that stuff. And just trying to make things that are interactive and visually pleasing, and just really convey the message, because we understand what we're talking about, but there are plenty of people who do not. And it's so essential to be able to convey your message in ways that people can understand. And especially working with coaches that may not have much of an educational what am I going for here? Just have much of a scholarly background. They're more athletes and have focused on their sport, and they understand their sport better than I ever can. But when I'm trying to explain them statistics, that's and data, that's not necessarily something they're going to get. And when they see things that like expected goals for this game were 2.57 to 1.09, and they lost the game 2-1, and I have to explain to them what this means, and not like, we need to have a good language, and visualization I think helps a lot with that. And so I think that's worked out really well to my advantage. Is I think I can get what people are seeing. I think I have a good eye for that. So I'll push that too, and just say that like, so what I'm saying is you can be involved in anything, and I think it can teach you skills that you'll use regardless, and obviously build connections and friendships. And so while I wasn't necessarily digging into super statistics clubs and stuff, it worked out for me really well.
If you don't mind, I want to definitely emphasize what Tim just said about being able to explain statistics and data to people who don't understand it. That's a huge part of my job too. And I think working on that skill is going to get you very far, because I feel like most industries, like, you're in the data day in and day out, but being able to take a step back and explain it to someone who doesn't have a background in math is a very great skill. If you want to practice that, like, find someone who's taking Stat 101 or whatever it's called now, and help them with their homework, like take it for someone who doesn't think that way, and being able to explain it, that will only help you in the future for sure. I think we might have lost Lisa.
I think we lost Lisa, so I think I'm going to go ahead and jump in and continue moderating. So, so one of the questions we got, is, have you guys found that managing work-life balance is challenging, and you all might be at different sort of periods of your life? You've all graduated in different years, so if you could, I guess, shed some light on what that looked like. Tim, maybe if you could talk about what it looked like a few years after graduating, and maybe what it looks like now. So Tim, maybe if we could start with you.
Yeah, please. When I started, I was single, and now I'm married and have a child who's almost 2. But I think it's always been, work is not the biggest thing in my life, and it won't be. And I've made that pretty clear, I think, even to my employers, as much as that may be a frightening thing. And I was starting to type this out, but it's funny because, in my job, the coaches are 24/7 soccer. Like that's what their lives are. And those are the people I'm around all the time. And they somewhat expect you to be available all the time. And I get it. And if you're going into that career, a lot of times that's what it is. And as I said, I've done a lot of work on the weekends, especially this past year. But I've tried to make it clear that there are just certain times where that's not going to happen. And I'm probably the one person in my office, as bad as it might be, who kind of sticks to their hours. Like I'm pretty much I'm getting out of here at 5 o'clock. Like that's just the way it is. I need to be home. And when you kind of set that boundary, I think it's easier to keep it. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that. I'm very proud of it. Like it's just something that I think is important to me. I don't want work to to take over my life. And that's not to say things don't come up sometimes, whatever, but as much as possible, I try to make it clear that that's important. And it's funny too, because early on I was tutoring, and I still am actually, but I was tutoring one night at this family's house and just helping this girl with math. And I got a call from our coach, and I just kind of, I ignored it. And he was texting me like during it afterwards, whatever. And he reached out to our video analyst asking what I was possibly doing. And I think he told him he's probably tutoring because he knew like that I did that some nights or whatever. But like my priority was, if I'm tutoring, like they have my time, like that's who gets it. I'm going to show them that they're important to me. And I was proud to be able to tell the coach the next day, like, yeah, I was tutoring. When I'm tutoring, I don't look at my phone. And so I don't know, I've always found that like whatever my time is for, like I'm giving that my all. And it's just important to me. And again, different jobs have different demands on hours. And I think mine can be demanding. I just try not to let it be overly so. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's such a healthy outlook. Does anyone else want to share sort of their perspective?
As long as it doesn't get me fired. No.
Yeah, that is important. That is important. Perspectives on work-life balance, or I guess I'd also expand that to, what are you doing for self-care right now? Because I think that's really, really hard.
Yeah, I'm definitely really big on work-life balance as well. And I think I really liked what Tim said, is set the boundaries early. It's easier to set the boundaries ahead of time than to retract the boundaries when your life gets more chaotic. So right now, I mean, I'm taking classes as well. So I really need to manage my time carefully and make sure that I, don't spend all my time both working and in classes if I can. I like to have a little bit of a life outside of that, but I really try to be really open with my manager just about like, hey, if I'm feeling a lot of pressure, like more things are just coming onto my plate, if it's not time sensitive, what comes first? What should I prioritize now? And really being transparent, because I think the more you try to juggle, the worse you're going to get at all of those little things that you're trying to juggle. So just being really transparent about that. But I think it's so important, especially when you're early in your career and you really just want to impress and you want to kind of make a good impression. You can do that in 40 hours a week, 100%. I rarely work more than, the normal kind of working hours, and I do just fine for myself. So if you really take your time and spend it wisely during the day, you don't have to work crazy hours. I would say too, it's a little tough now that we are all working from home. The work-life line has really been kind of muddied a little bit, because I work right next to where I sleep. And it's definitely a lot harder, but making sure that we set those boundaries, like shut your laptop at the end of the day and do not turn it back on till the next day. And just really setting those boundaries. I always try to kind of have a cutoff point where I'm like, okay, I'm done. And then I go work out. And that's my transition period where I just sweat it out and make sure to get a few steps in, because during the day I get like 5 steps in because I'm at my desk all day. So just getting some steps in, watching TV, reading a book, cooking something, like just getting my mind off things is a really great way, especially since we can't really go places right now. Just trying to find things that really bring me like peace and happiness is very important to me right now.
Absolutely. Ava or Bryant, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I similar sentiments. I think starting out, I was very worried about, my brand and how people are going to view me. Like, I just want to, put my head down and work. It came as soon as there's, because you're assigned something doesn't mean you have to get it done as soon as possible. There's deadlines, and you have to, I think, throughout your time at Uconn, you have to learn how to prioritize and meet those deadlines, but also focus on your personal life too, whether that is going to the gym or doing extracurricular stuff that, makes you happy. Those are things that, you have to kind of, throughout your time at Uconn, kind of figure out your time management skills. This pandemic has definitely made it hard in terms of making it black and white, in terms of, cutting off the work, just because I think people at work feel that, you you can send an email at 9 o'clock and you're going to get a response, or they try to page you and make it seem like it's very urgent, but it's really not. I can wait the next day. So I think I've been communicating that with our team that, things could wait. We're not finding the new vaccine for the coronavirus. We're just doing real estate. It can wait. So I just think it's just viewing things that way. You're not creating the new medicine that's going to save the world. A lot of this stuff can take its time. And I think for me, structure has been important. Setting my time for the gym in the morning, because I don't get the same steps that I used to when I used to be going to work and walking around the building and stuff like that. So now I need to make sure I make the time to go to the gym, make sure I take my eating breaks. Sometimes we forget to have lunch and it's like, holy crap, it's 4 o'clock and I didn't even eat, just because you're sitting down and plowing through the work. So those things are important. They're little things, but they add up at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely live in a culture of immediacy, so it's hard to strike that balance. So Ava, I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything everyone has said. I've definitely struggled with it, especially early on, like others have said, just feeling like you need to try to prove yourself. And in the consulting world, we're notoriously terrible at work-life balance, but I'm very lucky that my company as a whole values that, and things ebb and flow. So, there will be busy times where I am working more than 40 hours a week. And then there will be times where I ask my manager, say, it's a slow week, can I take off early on Friday? And it's not a problem. Like my company in particular is very flexible with that type of things. And I also have the opportunity to work remotely even before COVID. So I would work remotely from my sister's house in Seattle for a week. Those kind of things. That's something I definitely love about my company and will look for in my career. I just love that types of flexibility. And I would just echo what everyone said, going to the gym, communicating with your team about expectations ahead of time. Don't be afraid to over communicate is something that I've learned. It's always, especially, as someone who manages the team, I want to know it all. Tell me everything about what you're up to and what you're struggling with so that we can find a solution. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out for help when you need it.
I also
just want
to say quick, I feel like when I've had to speak up about these things, I didn't mention this, but usually it works out really well. It's not like these people are horrible people that want you to have a miserable life. That's the thing. So we have this I definitely am intimidated by our coaches or my bosses or whatever, and I have 6 of them. But each time I've had to say something about it, they always respond really well. When I've had to ask to leave early because I need to go to my brother-in-law's birthday party or something, they've always said yes. It's never been something where they're like, what's wrong with you? So I don't know. Don't be afraid of them. They're human beings who have families a lot of times too. As much as they look like they're always doing their job, they usually understand. So yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask the next question to be, because we're running a little short on time, just rapid fire, one skill that you learned from a class at Uconn that you're still using. And let's start with Sarah.
Rapid fire R. The R class was awesome, and I use it a lot.
To add to that, I will say SAS.
I was going to say SAS, but I'll say my marketing class.
Wow. I don't know. I guess it's fun. It all blends together. It's not imaginary numbers, I'll tell you that. But it is, I guess I'll say logic. I think I still use that in the ways you're trying to convince someone of something, and make a good case of something. So, and it definitely works its way into all programming. So, yeah.
Great. So our last question we're going to ask all of you is, if you are or were in a position to hire, what do you look for in your interns or in your recent grads?
I'll say the last person that we hired was a part-time video guy, but it was the main thing that separated him out from the other guy was his willingness to listen and his willingness to learn. The other person seemed like they kind of felt like they knew it all and were coming in to instantly start making coaching decisions, and it's like you're the lowest rung on the totem pole. That's not really your job at this. I don't even do that. So you have to kind of know where you're at, and just be ready to learn and ready to soak up what other people who, as much as you may not feel like it, are probably smarter than you, at least in a lot of areas. You need to be ready to listen to them and understand them, and then work your way into trust and work your way into more important things.
Just a simple one for me is coming prepared with questions and having that curiosity and interest of not only the role, but the company and the industry, doing some research, looking up in the news, what's happening in the industry. It just shows that you have that extra level of interest in the role, and you're not just trying to check off, a box to get a job after you graduate, which I know many students want to do. But that's what really sets someone apart, because many of the candidates that come through, they have the good GPAs. Some of them have very good experience on campus and have prior internship experience. But when it comes to that interview, a lot of the soft skills that we just talked about is what pretty much makes one stand out than the other, because it's a very tight competition.
I feel like a broken record, but I completely agree with what Tim and Bryant said. So I'll add something different. And I would say that I look for just someone that I enjoy the conversation. They're friendly. They showed their personality, because at the end of the day, we're hiring someone that's potentially going to sit right next to us at work for 40 hours a week. So you definitely want to show your true personality, and because you want to make sure the company is a good fit for you too. It's kind of like dating. You both have to agree that you will work together in a good relationship. So don't be afraid to show who you really are and be friendly and welcoming and warm. And those types of people definitely stick out in my brain when I do interviews.
Yeah, I think everyone pretty much covered it, but I've worked with a lot of different interns in my time at the company. I'm pretty heavily involved in the intern program, and the ones that really stood out to me were the ones that, asked questions, like an appropriate number of questions, not like kind of railing us with questions, but very genuine, like, hey, I really want to know more about this type of questions. I love seeing that curiosity and that like very genuine desire to learn more, showing your personality, like Ava said too, just being someone that I enjoy talking with, and kind of having a really natural conversation is really important. I think, you're in an interview, the hard skills are just on paper. They know how to read, they can read the hard skills. So tell them something that they can't read on the piece of paper, which is about the type of person you are and how you like to work with others and things like that. I would also say I always really struggled with the behavioral questions in interviews, like the tell me about a time when. I think they're very awkward questions, but everyone asks them. So practice them, and come up with scenarios where you can go to them and kind of in a very genuine, obviously way say like, hey, this is a time that I had to resolve a conflict, or this is a time where I worked with someone who I disagreed with, or whatever it is. Those can be unnatural to answer, so just be prepared for those, and it'll make the interview a little bit smoother.
Absolutely. Such wonderful advice for our students. And Lisa is here. So I will hand the floor back over to Lisa, our fearless moderator.
Thank you, Elissa, for stepping in there. And my apologies, everyone. Not sure what my laptop was doing in the middle there, but agree that was super, super helpful information. I always like to kind of end on that question of like, what are you all looking for, or what advice did you have for interns or new hires? Because I think that's kind of where all of our students are right now, and they have those questions kind of swimming in their heads. So we have just a couple of minutes left. So I want to kind of do a quick plug for something within the Center for Career Development, and then kind of turn it over to Alyssa to close us out for the evening. But I do really appreciate the four of you being here and kind of sharing your perspectives and your stories with our students tonight. And I want to go back to a comment that Bryant mentioned earlier about mentorship and how having a mentor can be really, really helpful in your career journey, whether you're just starting, you're a few years in, or you're many years in. And so I do just want to quickly share my screen and plug a resource that we have at the Center for Career Development, which is called the Husky Mentor Network. And if you go to our main website, career.uconn.edu, we actually have a shortcut to it right here in the top right-hand corner. Husky Mentor Network right here. And then there's a set of instructions for students to log in and a set of instructions for alumni to log in. So for our alumni panelists as well, you're welcome to join. But the great thing about the Husky Mentor Network is that it provides opportunities to continue these conversations like the ones that we're having tonight, where students who have questions and alumni who have answers can get together and kind of talk through those things. So if you're not already on the Husky Mentor Network and you found tonight's presentation helpful or fun or informative, I would highly recommend taking advantage of this resource to continue having these sorts of conversations. So that's the end of my plug for the evening, but thank you again so much for allowing me to be the moderator, and Alyssa, I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending. We very much appreciate it. A special thank you to our panelists and also to Lisa and Elissa for helping us set this all up. This was amazing. And we certainly hope to do something similar in coming semesters. I know it was mentioned tonight a few times that R and Python would come in very handy for you guys. We did just want to let you know the statistics department is very excited. We have actually just gotten approved 2 new courses that will venture into Python. And we do have a couple courses that also venture into R as well. So we'll get that information out to you as soon as we can on making sure that you guys know when those are being offered and when you can take them so that you can have that available to you. Also, one more thing, I know they mentioned clubs and extracurriculars. There is now a data science club, so I would highly encourage you guys to go and check that out, as that could be an exciting opportunity for you guys to kind of get involved in an area that you're interested in. We do also have a survey. I believe Lisa can share that real quick on our slide. We would love for you guys to go ahead and take our post-event survey just to let us know what you liked about the event, what you might look for in the future. Should we decide to offer more events like this, we would love to have your input. So please feel free to go ahead and fill out that survey for us. And then obviously, I know you guys are receiving emails from me all the time as the stats advisor. So if you do have any other specific questions that you'd like to talk about, feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email. Again, thank you to everyone who attended. Very much appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks,
everyone.
Get me in those Python classes. I'll be there.
I know. I think I need that actually.
Yeah, seriously. Thanks.
Look into non-degree.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. All right.
Bye, everyone.